Cookman was fearless in the kitchen. He swore he could cook anything. Anything. He worked at a pancake house called Casa de Panqueca. And he loved it. They made all kinds of little rolled up pancakes with sausages inside and orange syrup and omelets, and it was a wonderful place. But one day, dishwasher guy comes up to him, who was an avid shooter of wild, crazy little woodland animals and hunter, says, "Hey, Cookman, I have this raccoon that I, shot for my family to eat, but I'll sell it to you." He goes, "Oh, boy, that sounds like an exciting thing, but no, that's weird." And he said, "Just 10 thin, measly dollars for this raccoon for an experience you'll never forget." He said, "Okay," so arrangements were made. That night, Cookman went home and said to Cookman's wife, "Hey, Cookman's wife, I bought this raccoon and I'm going to cook it at our house." She goes, "Not in my house, you're not going to cook no raccoon. You can do that when I'm at work or something, but not while I'm here." He goes, "Well, okay." So he was so excited he couldn't hardly stand it, so any agreement was good. So the next day, he goes to work, and dishwasher guy brings his raccoon, and it's frozen in the shape of a wreath inside of a black plastic trash bag. He doesn't even look on the inside because he's so excited. He just wants to go home and cook it. So anyway, he puts it in the freezer, and then he goes home later, and he thaws it overnight in a giant pot of water. And all day long, it's thawing at his house, and he can hardly stand it till he can get home and cook his raccoon. And so he gets back home that night, and Cookman's wife, of course, is gone, and he pulls it out of there, and he goes, "Ah!" And he drops it back in the water. And he leans against the counter, and he just takes his breath, and there was something that he hadn't planned on that happened. The head was still on the raccoon, and had his little pointed nose and his little itchy teeth like this, and his glazed over white eyeballs, and it was just all there. So he was completely freaked out. And he said, "I don't know what to do." So he had a thought, "I'll call friend lady and go over to her house and cook it, or at least ask her." So he calls friend lady. He says, "Friend lady, I bought this raccoon, and I thought it out, and I pulled it out of the water, and it freaked me out, and the head's still on it. Can I come and cook it at your house?" And she goes, "You bought a raccoon? What am I? Yes, come on over." So she's a good friend lady. So anyway, he decided he had to take the head off because he just couldn't stand it with the head on it. So he pulls it out of the whole thing, out of the bucket of water, and looks at it and quivers, and he lays it carefully down, wraps the head in newspaper, cuts it off, sticks it in the trash, puts it back in the empty bucket or the empty pan, and zooms like the Batmobile over to the friend lady's house. And so he took along Joy of Cooking cookbook so he could get it just right. So he looks up wild game and says, "Okay, for raccoon, honestly, raccoon, put it in a pot and boil it for 2 hours." So he did, but they didn't say anything about cutting it up or disassembling it like you would a chicken. No, as it began to boil and the muscles began to contract, the elbow came out of the water and went back down in, and the shoulder came out of the water and went back down in, and its buttocks came up out of the water and went back down in. And so they were like, "Ah, what are we going to do?" So they, because they were really shocked. And they cut it in half finally, and it sank back down in the water and finished cooking. Then Joy of Cooking cookbook said, to get that strong, gamey flavor off of your raccoon, take a teaspoon of baking soda, mix it up in a cup of water, and pour in and boil for 1 minute. And it'll take that flavor off. And, well, they didn't want that strong flavor on, but what they did not say is that it was going to foam some. So it started just a little foam, and then it was more foam, and then it was over the top foam. Then it was running down the side of the pan foam, into the fire foam. So their whole house, friend lady's house, smelled like burnt raccoon foam. And they were freaked out again. So finally the cookbook says, the same Joy of Cooking cookbook, says bake for 2 hours. So they put it in a pan and they baked it for 2 hours, just like it said. And then they tasted it. It was the greasiest, darkest, toughest, shoe leathery kind of meat they had ever tasted in their whole life. And right that moment, Cookman decided, friend lady, I'm going to leave this at your house tonight so that it can cool properly, and then I'll pick it up later. And then Cookman went home and promptly forgot about it for the entire next week. Finally, friend lady calls, say, Cookman, are you ever going to come and get this raccoon out of my refrigerator? And he said, oh no. You can keep it and share it with your family. I'm going to donate it to you. And that was the experience that taught Brother Rawleigh that sometimes you can most definitely get what you want, but you don't always want what you got.